Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the MMA Show, wherever you may be. In this month's episode, we will preview UFC 302, that's UFC 302, Makhachev versus Poirier, for the UFC Lightweight Championship of the world. In this month's, this podcast is sponsored by Hatton James Legal, that's hattonjameslegal.co.uk. Go there for all your employment law needs. And also sponsored by Overst Events. That's overstevents.com. Your event just easier. Last but not least, I'd like to thank SRBmedia. The podcast would not be possible. They help produce it and edit the show. So that's SRBmedia.co.uk. And they have an array of podcasts from football to speedway to literature. A range of podcasts that you may want to listen to. To contact the podcast, you can email the MMA Show 7@gmail.com. That's the MMA Show 7@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. It's Let's Talk MMA. The Facebook page is Let's Talk MMA. Okay, that's the introductions over. Moving on to the main part of the show. I've got a very special guest today. All the way from the northeast of England. It's Josh. Josh, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Can't wait to get stuck into the show.
Yeah. So we're gonna go straight into UFC 302. So if there's time, we'll do maybe a couple of fan questions as well. So we're going to go into 302, the co-main event and the main event, and then there's some decent MMA news that's been around the airwaves, so we'll talk about those things as well, and a couple of other subjects as well. Okay, so I was just doing a bit of research, Josh, and for some reason I thought this was Makhachev Poirier 2, but it wasn't. It's the first fight. So
yeah, I mean, obviously he fought with Khabib, didn't he? The first time. Yeah.
That's what must have been in my mind, because when I looked at UFC 302, I was expecting to see the two Roman numerals, but it's obviously their first fight. But that's just a thought I had, flash of thought. So moving on to the card now. This is a reasonable sort of lineup in the card. It's a very good main and co-main event. But it doesn't go much further than that. But give us your thoughts on the matchup, the co-main event first, and just give us a couple of lines about each fighter, and then we'll go into the strengths and weaknesses and get a prediction from you.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think for the co-main, you've got a very interesting matchup there. You've got quite a different palette of abilities, if you will, for both fighters. You've got Sean Strickland, who's quite rather rough around the edges. He's not exactly amazing at anything. He's more just really good at the fundamentals. He's got great boxing. He's quite renowned for that Philly shell sort of stance that he uses. And then you've got Paulo Costa, who's obviously been around for quite a while. He's been doing well recently. He obviously came back after quite a long not layoff, but I mean, he hasn't really fought in a while until he fought Robert Whittaker. And we saw there that he's still got something to give to the company. Yeah. And he did really well in that fight, I thought.
Was Costa's last fight with Luke Rockhold?
I think that's right. It was on the, I want to say it was the Leon Edwards card, the second Maru fight. Yeah,
I think so. You're right about Costa. For one reason or another, injury or something else, he hasn't fought for it's got to be a good 12 to 18 months. So that's you could call that a layoff. And Strickland, he's in the news sometimes for the wrong reasons, but he's in the news. But in terms of, before we get into the skills of each fighter, the sort of merit of each fighter, and I think Strickland is favourite. But for the middleweight belt, does it have any bearing on the belt, this fight, for you, either fighter or the fight itself?
I think at the moment, middleweight's in quite a funny state because you've got sort of almost headless chicken sort of scenario, because you've got, I think it's Duplessis with the belt at the moment. And of course, he had a very, very razor close fight with Sean Strickland for the belt. And Sean Strickland had just beat Adesanya, and that was in quite a dominating manner. And now you've got talk of, obviously, you've got the rivalry between Duplessis and Adesanya, the whole African storyline dynamic, the real African, whatnot. But I think there'd be a lot of people I've spoken to anyway, a lot of people who would sort of be almost put off by the idea that Strickland doesn't get a title shot next, because obviously, like you say, it was a very close fight.
Yeah, I think the sort of the person that's got the ace up the sleeve is Adesanya. If he says, "Yeah, I'm going to fight Duplessis," then that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think from this fight, Strickland is nearer the belt, because if Costa wins, and maybe at the end of the day, UFC is a promotion that is all about pay-per-view and the dollars. If Costa did something amazing, he could sort of be one fight away, but I don't think so. He's had that layoff, and since the Adesanya loss, he's not really done anything great. So I think Strickland is closer to the belt than Costa in terms of what this fight means for the title. Costa obviously a contender once for the title, and he didn't do himself any justice, or he was just a shambles of a fighter for that one. And Strickland, he was close, and you're right, he's got this weird style that when you look at him, you think, well, what is he doing and how is he effective? But if you're in the cage and you're a couple of feet away from him, then obviously that's a different story, because he's been a world champion.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't really stand out, Strickland, with any sort of outstanding ability. It's more just he manages to almost dampen the effects of his opponent, if you will. I mean, you look at his fights especially the fight with Adesanya. I mean, one of the most technical kickboxers the UFC's ever seen, and he made him look amateur, really. He was very anti-kickboxing, if you will. He was checking kicks very well. He was sort of saying a no-nonsense approach towards the fight, and he gave Duplessis a lot of problem as well, and that was one of the closest title fights I think I've ever seen.
And in terms of this fight, so stylistically, what would be your analysis of the two styles?
I think you don't really see a whole lot of wrestling from the two. Obviously, Strickland's quite, I would say, categorised into more of a striker. And you look at Costa, I mean, he doesn't sort of go for offensive wrestling as much as some of the fighters in that division, but he has dealt with top-level wrestlers in the past. Obviously, Yoel Romero, Olympic-level wrestler.
Yeah.
Who else? And you've got... But yeah, he has got good jiu-jitsu. I mean, from what I've seen and what I've heard, he does seem to have, obviously, the Brazilian as well. So his ground game, I think he has a great advantage over Strickland in that department. But I mean, I think I can see the fight being mainly played out on the feet, to be honest.
Yeah. Costa, I think the first 7 or 8 fights, he knocked everyone out. And he was almost like one punch, and the other person was looking at the lights from the canvas. But Strickland is not really a knockout artist, and he's more of a pressure fighter and a awkward fighter, and a sort of, he'll maul you with his style and his punches. And he just sort of walks in, Strickland. He doesn't cover up, or his chin's in the air, but he obviously works. He's been a world champion. But yeah, Costa, I've read the same thing. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And, if he went to ground, you'd probably favour him. But the fight seems to point to some kind of stand-up war, depending if Costa can really let loose, or will Strickland style smother that, like you said at the start. It's sort of a smothering style of slightly mauling, on your feet. And, it's going to be interesting. Maybe cardio might come into it, because Costa hasn't fought as we said, for a while. So that could be a factor.
Definitely. I mean, conditioning-wise, there aren't many better than Sean Strickland in the roster, I'd say. So that could definitely be a factor.
Okay, it's prediction time. So put your money where your mouth is, Josh.
I think if I was to put money on it, I would go with Strickland, just simply because you've seen Costa in the past. When you sort of think about a similar matchup, you look at Vettori. Yeah, sort of struggled with some of the jabs at times, and to an extent, Uriah Hall you had in there, and those are fights where he sort of looked as if though he wasn't comfortable. And I think Strickland could have that edge that would just essentially do the job in the end, get the job done.
Yeah, I think for me, Costa's got too many question marks and too much of a question mark. Because of the time off, and is he focused? I don't know. So Strickland, he just lost the belt, and after the fight, he was saying, was he complaining of a headbutt in the Duplessis fight, if I remember rightly?
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So he felt he was headbutt sort of swung the fight towards Duplessis, and so he felt it was unjust that he lost, so he's maybe got the fire to come back with this. And as I said, he's probably this win away, if it's a reasonable win, that and Adesanya, he holds the trump card. He could be fighting Duplessis again, like a rematch. So I'm going to go with Strickland. It's a 3-round fight. It's not I don't believe it's a 5-round fight. So
right.
I think that will make a difference. And Strickland, with his style, just keep coming forward. Unless Costa, which he hasn't done for a while, just knocks him out. But in his early days, he was. I think he's got 11 knockouts, Costa, on his record. So it'd be interesting. Okay, so we both agree on Strickland there, and that's good. So moving on to the main event, which is for the Lightweight Championship of the world, and we've got Poirier, who is there because of that impressive win against Benoit. And what did you think of that?
Well, I think first of all, Dustin did really well, especially coming after a very impactful knockout, that high kick from obviously Justin Gaethje, and to come back straight, fresh from off a knockout, to come then and fight not long after, to fight a new contender in the lightweight division, someone who was gaining praise from everyone, a very funny style, and to come back and sort of just make him look amateur was really impressive, I thought. Yeah.
That without that win, Poirier wouldn't have got this chance, and the way he did it. So that's all credit to him. And the Makhachev. See, the thing with Poirier is that he probably knows he's not going to beat Makhachev on the ground, and he got choked out by Khabib, and that was quite devastating for him, and that was in Abu Dhabi a few years ago.
Yeah,
and he probably doesn't want a repeat of that on his record.
No.
So Poirier's tactic is going to be keep it on the feet, and I think Poirier's got decent defensive wrestling. He doesn't show any offensive wrestling. So, but Makhachev, like the Dagestanian wrestlers, they're masters at just keep trying to take down single leg, double leg, single leg, trip. So if it goes to ground, which it will at some point, then you've got you're just sort of looking at the clock of when Makhachev's going to submit. Now, keeping it standing up, that doesn't solve the problem for Poirier, because as Makhachev has shown against Volkanovski, that he's very, very good standing up, with his high kicks and his stand up. And so it's not a case of just keep it standing up and you got a better chance, because Poirier could also get a lot of damage standing up. So give us your assessments on, let's say Makhachev. Well, everyone knows the strengths, but just give us your thoughts.
I think to compare, not obviously it's a bit of a lazy analogy, but to compare him to Khabib, I mean, Khabib was very. You knew what you were going to get with Khabib. He was obviously going to be a wrestler fighter, wrestler, heavy on the wrestling, not much on the striking orientation as much. But you look at Islam, and you see someone who's a lot more well-rounded. He's got that very impressive wrestling background. Obviously, like it's like in Dagestan, is what they like to do. It's like almost what it says on the tin, but with Islam, he seems to have, well, certainly what is showcased in the last big fights, the Pals fight, the Volk fights. He's got an excellent striking background and stand with some of the best, like Volk twice. And I think that might just give him an edge because obviously, like you were saying about Poirier and Khabib, Poirier did come close with Khabib, but I think obviously he had that guillotine in, I think that was in the second round, I want to say. And then he just sort of fell astray towards the end and got submitted. But I think with Islam, I think he's going to give you more to think about, especially on the feet. So I think he'll just have the edge in this fight.
Yeah, can you see Poirier winning it in any circumstances or situations?
I would really like it if Poirier did come away with a win. I mean, I think it would be a really good moment for the UFC if Dustin comes full circle and manages to get a hold of a belt. But I think the only way Poirier can win is just essentially sprawl and brawl. But as you say, Makhachev, it's not as simple as that. You've got to worry about all elements of his game. And I think even if he can sort of, we know he has great takedown defense, but it's different kettle of fish, Dagestani, like you were saying.
The way I can see Poirier winning is he's obviously one of the best boxers in the UFC, in MMA, Poirier, and he's shown he has got the power to knock someone out. So there's absolutely no reason why that couldn't happen to Makhachev. Well, there is a reason. There's lots of reasons, but it could happen. And Poirier is skillful enough and powerful enough to deliver that to Makhachev. But if you were playing a game of odds, then you would say it's a remote chance, not massively remote, but it's a chance that Poirier has. But Makhachev, with his stand-up being polished and effective, he's just got too many tools in the MMA Swiss knife, and I just can't see Poirier getting a win.
Yeah, I mean, I think he will definitely struggle. I mean, it's not as, like you were saying, it's not as simple as just defending the takedown. It's worrying about everything that Islam has to offer, and I think ultimately that will just be too much, especially Dustin coming towards the end of his career now, and Makhachev seemingly just getting started. So I think it will be a long shot for Dustin to come away with a win.
So it looks like we're both going to go for Makhachev, but how do you think Makhachev will win?
To be honest, I don't really see a finish from Islam. I think if there is a finish, I think it will be Dustin. I think if Islam wins, I think he will just sort of textbook smother him, not give him any room to breathe, and ultimately just cruise to a decision.
Yeah, I think Makhachev will probably win by submission, but I think he'll be in the later rounds as Dustin possibly may get tired, because he will have to defend takedowns on a regular basis. Whether Makhachev gets 3 out of 4, 3 out of 5, whatever, 5 out of 7, he will get some. And defending takedowns is tiring. So it's going to be a one hell of a fight. But I think Makhachev will do it in the championship rounds, and I think he'll submit Poirier. I don't think he'll be able to knock out Poirier. He's too good of a stand-up fighter, Poirier, and so it looks like Makhachev for me via sub, but you're saying points. Okay, that's good. So that brings us to the the UFC 302 card, and that is happening. When is that happening?
I want to say it's the first of the month.
Second of June, I think. 1st of June, Saturday. Yeah. So not too far away. We're pre-recording this. But there's also been a couple of other announcements in the last few days as we look at it. We're obviously both from the UK, from England. So Edwards Bilal is the main event at 3:04, is it?
That's the one. In Manchester, I want to say.
Yeah, Manchester, I believe. So, and Aspinall Blades is the co-main. Yeah. What do you think of the main event? It was going to happen, but it just seemed to take forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one with the whole Edwards Bilal thing. Of course, there was the first fight on Fight Island with the early stoppage early no contest with the eye poke.
Eye poke, yeah.
It was quite a bad one. But before that, I mean, you could see Leon was clearly outclassing Bilal. He clearly was winning that fight, I would say. And I think that this time out, I don't think it'll be much different.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a lot to suggest that what Bilal could do. Yeah, he's had a few good wins. It was quite funny when, after Leon Edwards poked Bilal in the eye and he stopped the fight, Covington started calling Leon Edwards Scissorhands, which was quite funny. But I can't see anything more, especially Edwards. This would be his fourth defence, but obviously, the third or fourth? Yeah, fourth. Kamaru Usman, Covington, third defence, yeah.
Third.
So he's gaining in confidence and he's gaining in stature. I wish he was a bit not more vocal, but a bit more presence.
Present.
Yeah, but it's okay. That's the way he is. So he's got his fan base from Birmingham and England, and so he seems to be doing all right. But yeah, the co-main is for the interim heavyweight.
I mean, I think that the whole kerfuffle with heavyweight is something strange going on there, because obviously you had Jones coming back from a long break, and then he came back at heavyweight. He won the belt, and then I think it was, I want to say, dislocated his shoulder or injured a tendon or something. It was really bad, and he's been out for, I want to say, better part of 9-10 months now. So
yeah,
and obviously you've got all this hoo-ha with Aspinall. He's saying, I want to fight John Jones. You got Jones sort of dismissing him, saying he's only interested in fighting Miocic. So it's a bit messy at the moment at heavyweight. But I mean, with the rematch here, you've got, I think this is Aspinall's only dent on his record. I'm not sure if it's a loss, but it was obviously the only fight he hasn't won. So, and obviously it was quite an unfortunate way with the knee injury. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Blades is his strength is wrestling, but Aspinall, he's very fast and obviously very powerful knockout. So I think Blades has to be careful at rushing in for a double leg, because he tried that against what's his name, the big heavyweight who won last week before.
Was it Lewis?
Derek Lewis, yeah, and he got kneed in the head. Yeah. Was it a punch? Was it uppercut or was it a knee? Uppercut, I think.
I think it was an uppercut.
Yeah.
I think it was an uppercut.
And he just timed it beautifully. The wrestler came in
perfectly
around hip height to take him down, and he just uppercut, and that was very impressive by Derek Lewis. So, so I'm sure Aspinall and his team are watching that, because Blades is not going to jab around for a couple of rounds. He's going to go straight in. So there's no sort of mystery to the strategy there. But that should be a good fight. Jones is holding the trump card. He came up from light heavyweight and won the belt in his first fight. he wants Stipe for two reasons: legacy for sure, and money as well. You know, that's going to create the most buzz. So it's probably going to be Miocic's last fight, win or lose. I think that's pretty safe, and it could be Jones's last fight, because what else can he prove? He's been a light heavyweight champion, I think, for 12 fights. If he didn't get into trouble, he probably would have been light heavyweight for 20 fights. So he's got nothing else to prove if he beats Miocic. But Paddy Pimblett's been added to the card as well.
Is that against Bobby Green?
Yeah, for 304.
I think that's. I think with that one, I think you've got to have Pimblet as a big underdog there. I mean, Bobby Green's just coming off a good, convincing win against Jim Miller. Bit of a scrap, bit of a war. He's had tough fights. He's fought some of the best. He's obviously fought Poirier. You've got to give it to Bobby Green, because I think Paddy's coming off a decision win to Tony Ferguson, and it wasn't really that convincing.
Yeah, it was a weird build-up, weird fight.
Yeah, very strange one. It was with a version of Tony who coming off, what is it, losing streak?
6 or 7 maybe.
Or yeah. So it's not looking the best for Pimblett's chances.
Okay, just looking around the MMA news, looks like, I'm just reading a headline, so I've got no background information. In Russia, Khabib has been allegedly some tax debt, so he hasn't paid taxes or whatever. I don't know. It's just a headline I'm reading. Alleged tax debt in Russia, and Conor McGregor is giving him support and sort of sounding out some good vibes by calling him a typical rat behaviour. So
it's good to see that he's carrying on that.
Yeah,
that sort of hatred.
Yeah, it's true Conor fashion. And just saying that, just talking about Conor, he for some reason said that Topuria, what's his name? Topuria. Ilie. Reminds him of the rat that used to be Conor's friend. What's his name? The fella, what's his name? The Russian? Lobov.
Oh, yeah,
Artem Lobov, yeah. So Conor's just ratting on everyone. So that's about the MMA news. Not too much going on, but for us, the interest was UFC 304, the card in England. So that's going to be good. So what about coming to your? So just to tell the audience that Josh had an amateur fight recently, a few weeks ago, and. So tell us about what was the event first?
It was for the amateur fight over for, it was a fundraiser, so managed to get a decent amount of money raised for charity, and at the same time get some of my own experience, sort of what it's like to compete. Support from my coaches is really helpful. And also from fundraisers, people who wanted to donate, managed to raise a good amount for charity, so did well there.
Mm-hmm. So going on to the what was the build-up like for you for training and things like that?
It was definitely a great experience. I mean, you had a sort of camp style, if you like. You had different aspects of training. We were doing jiu-jitsu sessions, striking sessions 2-3 times a week. Obviously, outside of training, going on runs and whatnot. It was quite almost a gratifying experience. I was sort of getting insight on what it's like to sort of be in that competition state of mind and have that sort of preparation, if you will, and getting ready for competition and getting up for a fight. So it was really was quite an enlightening experience as well.
Yeah, I can bet. So, what would you say your main strengths are in the different skills that you need for MMA?
I think personally, I'm much more leaning towards a striker. I like kickboxing, bit of Thai boxing. I'm sort of oriented with low kicks and like to throw kicks to the body and a lot of combinations with hands. Whereas my ground game isn't the best. That was one thing throughout the camp. I was sort of putting impotence on takedown defense and also Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, making sure I can handle myself on the ground.
And obviously, tell us the result of your fight as well.
Yeah, so I managed to come away with a win on points, which is really, really good. It was quite an interesting one. It was 3 rounds, all 2 minutes each. And funny enough, the first rounds, I probably lost quite favourably. And then the last 2 rounds, I managed to turn it around. So that was also a good experience.
Oh, well done. So you reckon you came back off losing the first round?
Yeah.
And what do you think contributed to your 2 rounds that you won? What did you do? Did you pressure, ground and pound, or a stand-up, or more aggression?
Well, for the first rounds, funnily enough, I actually went for a glove touch, and in Shamayan fashion, the bloke sort of ignored it, went in for landed a decent straight, nothing crazy, but it did wobble me because I wasn't expecting it, which is my fault for not having my hands up and prepared. But and then from there, I think we went to the ground and sort of just smothered me for the remainder of the round. But round 2 and 3, it was more of just a takedown defense. It was sort of telegraphing some of the takedowns, managing to stuff some of them, get some underhooks in, and from there go into a clinch or pop in some knees, and then sort of just use my striking more. I managed to land a few good, nice straights. So managed to get away with the decision.
Did you feel you was close to finishing when you was dominant in any of the second and third round?
Funnily enough, second rounds, I think I went for a trip and ended up on the bottom. And from there, his neck was sort of around my chest area, and I managed to get in a Darce choke. Oh! And I had that in. It was quite tight.
Yeah.
But the only thing was the gloves on the sort of on the material. There was like a little cusp where the thumb is, and it was hard to get that last bit of squeeze. So despite my greatest efforts, a fair play to the bloke as well, because he was to my opponent, because he must have been there for about, I want to say, 7-8 seconds and managed to survive the choke, so he did well.
Yeah. So you got any plans for any more fights, or?
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed. Towards the later part of the year, there's more events coming down locally, so I'll be able to sort of put myself forward for those, and fingers crossed can carry on where I started.
Oh, good. So good luck with that, and keep us posted. You'll certainly be on again on the podcast, so we'll have a update on your next few fights. And no, that's good, Josh. Thank you very much. You've given some really good insights, and some really good analysis there. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on, Chief. Really appreciate it. So this has been the MMA Shower and UFC 302. Makhachev versus Poirier, UFC Lightweight Championship of the World, taking place, I think it's in New Jersey, Newark, and on the 1st of June, Saturday, 1st of June. This has been sponsored by hattonjameslegal.co.uk, hattonjameslegal.co.uk, overstevents.com, and produced by SRBmedia.co.uk. That's SRBmedia.co.uk. So wherever you may be, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and thank you for listening.